Welcome to today's stream, and we are going to start our video. So we are going to create a simple CRUD ASP.NET Core Web API. So as you can see, this is my Visual Studio 2026. I'll just create a new project. So as you can see, this is our templates. So here we are going to search for ASP.NET Core Web API. Then here I'll just so you can search from the templates here, say .NET Web API. So you can see here we have our templates. Then if we proceed and say next, so we are going to create that is ASP.NET Core Controllers project. So I'll just proceed, and there I'll say this is my students sample API. We'll call this sample API project. So this is my student sample API project. So for the location, you can put in the location where you want your project to be placed. Then I'll place my solution and project in the same directory. So if I just proceed here, I can see I can choose the frameworks. So currently I have .NET 7, which is out of support, .NET 8, which is long-term support, then .NET 9 and 10. So for now, I'll just use .NET 10. So then for authentication type, I'll use, so let me just check here which one we can use. I'll just use Microsoft. Let me just use none for now. Then here I'll go with configure for HTTPS, then enable Open API support and use controllers. So if you want to use minimal APIs, then you can untick this one. For now, I'll just proceed with that. Then I'll say next. Then my project will be created. So you can see this is how my project is being created. Then we have our ASP.NET Core project. So that's the first thing you can do, and you'll have your ASP.NET Core project created. So we have our program.cs file. So this is our entry point to our application. We have the app settings. So here we have our app settings. We have nothing here. We have our weather forecast model, and we also have our weather forecast controller. So if we just launch this particular, even without launching, we can try to do some things. So what I want us to do is we need to install some NuGets. I'll just right click here, and I'll say here manage NuGet packages. Then here we can install, I want us to use Swagger. So I'll just install Swagger. So if we just do that, then we have swashbuckle.ASP.NET Core. So we can install that. Then we also have SwaggerGen. So I'll just add that. And we can also have the Swagger UI. So install those NuGets. So if you go to our dependencies, you'll have the packages, and you'll see those NuGets on this particular side of the project. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to go to our program.cs, and we are going to have our Swagger there. So we're going to add it. So here, so if we go to here, we'll have here. So I'll just switch off this one. But instead of switching off, we can change this to, you can say add SwaggerGen. Then inside here, we can say here use Swagger, and you can also have here use Swagger UI, and say use Swagger UI. So here you can see this is for development environment. So in case you want it to be seen even in production, then you can have this here. So that's a simple way on how we've done that. So we can try to launch our project and see how this looks like. So if we just come here and launch our project, you can also see the port number that the project is running under the launch settings.json, then you will see it here. So you can see that is our, so let me just check. So let's have a new, so if we go to our browser and we try to have this, is so this one, then we can have our link here, then we say Swagger. So you can see, so we have our project running. So we have our student sample API project and we have our weather forecast here. So if we try to execute, then we'll get some results. So you can see these are some of the results that we have. But this is hard coded. So you can see on our weather forecast controller, we have these summaries here. So these are some of the results that we are getting. So this is what we are getting. So the next thing that I want us to do is let's create our DB context. So what I want us to do is let's create a folder here called database. Let's call it database. Then here we can call this application DB context. Application DB context. So we add that. So that is our application DB context. But before doing anything, then we need to add some NuGets. I want us to add EFCO. So we search that. So then we should be able to add Microsoft Entity Framework Core. So if I just come here and say insert, so there we go. Apply. Then you can have the SQL Server. Apply. And you can also have design. And you can also add the tools. Let's just see how this looks like. Design, then tools. So it's adding. So if you're new to this channel and you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing, like the video, and also comment down below. So if I go here, apply, then I can do here tools. I'll just add tools. There we go. Then I think the next thing is if we go to application DB context, I want us to do something here. So on our application DB context, we are going to inherit from DB context, and we can import some. So we need to import EFCO. So there we go. So here you can see we need our application DB context. Then we have our options. Then that is our application DB context. So the next thing is we need to have it on our program.cs. So I'll just come here and we need to have it here. So I'll just come here and say builder.services.add DB context. Then as you can see, we have some suggestions here. So the first thing is we need our application DB context. So we'll say application DB context. Then here we need to import our EFCO. Then our connection string, we need to have our connection string here. So what we need to do here, we say connection string. And you can see it as suggested for us. So here we have our default connection, then the server. So we are going to use SQL Server. So I'll just open, and here I'll create a new database called students API. So students API. So this is our database. So for the server name, I'll just come here and say site Then I'll copy this. So this is my server name. I'll go here and I can paste it here. Then my database name, this should be the database name. I'll take the database name from here. I'll copy that, then come here and paste it. So we have trusted connection, then multiple active. Then I can add something called trust server certificate. Then this one I can say this is true. So that is it. So I have this one. So trust server certificate. So we have that. So on our program.cs now, our connection string here, we should take the default connection. So this is our connection string. I'll just come here and say here all connection, then everything should be okay. Now we've added our application DB context. We have our default connection. So let's create a model. So I'm going to create a folder called models. So that is models. Then on this model, we can create a class called student. Then we can have some properties. So we say name, we can have these as first name, first name. So this is first name, and say middle name, and have these as middle name. Then we can also have last name. You can also have, let's say, date of birth. Do here date of birth. You can also have email address. Then we can have address. So that's enough. So the next thing here now is we can have this in our application DB context. So we can have here public DB set. You can see we can have this as student, then we can import this. So we'll have our students there. So we now have our program.cs configured. Our application DB context is okay. We have our students table. So this will be translated to the students table, and it will have these fields, all these fields here. So the next thing is we need to add migration. So to add migrations, what do we do? So you can come here and say tools, then NuGet package manager console, NuGet package manager console. Then we'll be having our console here. So the first thing is you can say add migration. So this will create add migration, and you can give it the migration name. So you can say student initial file. So initial file. So if you press enter, so it will create a folder called migrations, and it will generate our migration file. So it's more of a commands that it will actually execute on our database. So you can see here we have a student initial file, which is our file name that we've given. Then you have our create table. You have the student. You have the students. This is a students table. It will create this table. You have the ID int, and you can see it's actually auto incremental. Our first name, middle name, last name. So this one, the next important command that we are going to execute is update database. Say update database. So this will now translate these statements and actually update our database, creating new tables. So if you come to our database, we don't have any tables. So if we now run update database, it will create those tables. So if we proceed, so you can see it has executed, and you can see here we have our create table statement. We have all these students here. This is command. You can see this is a SQL statement, create table students. Here we have ID, first name, middle name, last name, email address, and we have our constraint. So if we go to our database, we should be able to see that particular table. So we have two tables. We have migrations, which tracks all our migrations, and we also have students. So these students is what we now have. So assuming you have these, you have a data, you want to run this in a remote database, you can do script migration. So if you just do script migration, it will generate scripts for you. So you can also specify the file name. For me, I just have one file. So it will, if I run that, it will give me the scripts that I can execute directly. So as you can see, let's just wait and see. So if you're new to this channel and you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. And if you want us to be doing more of these live sessions, so you can comment down below. So let's just wait. I think it should be, yes. So here we are. So we have our EF core. So as you can see, it is creating this table. We have this statement as well, and it is inserting. So if you execute this, then you will get the same result. So the next thing that we now have is we've created our table. We have it in our database, as you can see. So the next thing that we can do is we can scaffold. So I'll just come here, add, and say new scaffolded item. New scaffolded item. So if you are watching our videos, you can comment down below, and we'll be happy to actually engage. So I'll just come here and say API controller with actions using entity framework core. So if I add it, then I will just choose my model, which is a student, then DB context, application DB context, and this is my student's controller. So if I just add, it will generate my CRUD endpoints. That is the get, put, delete, and actually add. So let's see how those endpoints looks like. So you can be doing more of these updates. So if you are new to this channel and you haven't subscribed, so you can even chat us down there, put in some comments, and also engage. Let's engage and ensure that we are able to share more on what you think. So as you can see, we now have our students controller. So this is our students controller. We have our get students, and this should give us a list of students. This is the entire list. Then we have get student by ID, put, updating student detail, and also post, whether we are getting students, that is adding new student. Then we delete a student and check if a student exists. So if we try to launch our app, we should see that everything now, we now have another controller. So you can see, we are able to see all the endpoints. We have the students, we have this get this list of students. We also have the post students, get student by ID, put student by ID, and delete. So we don't have any students. So if we try to execute, we don't have any list. So you can see this is empty. So let's try to add a student. So we can do a post. So I'll just say this is a macro. I'll say here macro code, macro code, say code. Then I'll say Badia. Then this is my date of birth. And say here that. Then say here test at at gmail.com, and I can say here test address. So if I execute this, you can see it has returned a result. That means it has inserted and we have our ID, which is 1. So if we go to our database and execute, we should see the result here. We have the first name, middle name, last name, date of birth, email, and address. So let's try to add another student. So it say this is macro 1, 1, 1. So execute, so you can do another 2, 2, 2. You execute, you can do here 3, 3, 3. So you're trying to get some dummy data, and you can say this is 4, 4, 4. Then you can do here 5, 5, 5. Then we can, so if we go back here, we should get our results. You can see we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these are some of the data that we have. So if we try to go now to get details, so you can see we have these students. So if we try to say get students, it should get us all those records. So you can see we have these records here. So we say here, so we should be able to get this particular list of students. As you can see here, we have the list of students, and here we have all the information here. So what I want us to do is, if we go back and say get student by ID and put here to execute, you can see I have one student details. I can say here 1. I can see I have the ID here. So assuming you want to update, so you can try to update a student detail. So you can post this here. You can try it. That is under put. If I try this and paste it here, so I'll say this is macro updated. This is updated. We also have this is updated. So if I just post, execute, we need the ID. So here I'll put 1. And you can see if we go back to our database, we should get that record with updated. So you can see our first record is macro updated, updated, updated. So that means we have our record updated. So to delete, I can delete the first record. So I'll just come here and say 1. And if I execute, it will delete my record. So if I come back here, I should not be having the first record. So you can see our ID starts with 1. So I think that is it for today. So as you can see, we've been able to create a simple student sample API, and we've linked this to the database, and you can be able to do everything. But also, in case you want to ensure that you maximize speed, so on our students, for example, on our get students, so you can see here we have our students name, the students list. So because we can do something called as no tracking, just to ensure that because we are not updating anything, so this will actually improve the speed. And you can also rename some of the endpoints in case you want to rename them. But I wanted us just to create a simple API here and see how this works with EFCO. So that is it for today, and see you in our next episode. Bye.